Here we are in January at Willow Bee. We wanted to give you a few tips as far as establishing your packages that you are going to buy. The first foremost comment that we have is that you need to have some help. If you don't have experience or help, even if you got experience, you need help. Even experienced beekeepers have a circle of guys that they talk with and bounce ideas off of, and every condition every year is different. Every situation seems to be different. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to repeat itself as much as we'd like, but you need to have some support. You need to be able to teach yourself. As far as Willow Bees are concerned, we're beekeepers. We're not a distributor house. We're not a queen supplier. We're not a consultant or an educator. You got to get that someplace else. We're really just providing you a package, but we wanted to give you a little bit of information about how you could be a little more successful with your package, because we are not what you would call a package producer. Most packages are produced in the South or on the West Coast. We bring ours back here and shake them in Nebraska, which is a little different, and we shake them pretty early. The reasons for that is we got to get these bees knocked down coming out of the almonds and get them ready to nuke ourselves. We got to get these nukes built by the middle of the month, and so we got to get these bees cut down so we can shake or produce our nukes for the new year. The advantages of a nuke early are that it's an early pollinator for you, and it has a better chance of making some honey for you, which is what a lot of you are interested in. I mean, to a certain extent, it's just beekeeping, but we are honey producers, and it gives you a better chance at that. Your eastern part of the state sees those crops come pretty early, and the rule of thumb is it takes a package about 10 weeks to become a full-blown unit. So as you can see, it puts you right in that middle of June period. And by getting going early, you have a better chance of that. With the larger package, you have a better chance of that. And but it makes a few things you got to be aware of. For one, we're not able to produce. We find even with ourselves that the later queens are much better. Later meaning approaching the 1st of May. The industry's changed a lot, where all the early queens are sucked up by the West Coast, and all the package producers are using all the queens early. And our supply of getting a queen reliably for our packages the 1st of April is just not good enough. So what we do is, we're nuking in California too. So what we'll do is stick old queens in there. And the idea of the old queen is just to get the package established, and then you can come back in the middle of May while it's still in a single, and still probably only 5, 6, 7 frames of bees, and find that queen and put in a good new queen that's going to be superior and last for you all into the next season. Because buying packages is expensive, and to be a successful queen, if you're going to be make money at it or not, economically viable, you need to keep your bees alive, and the only way you can do that is with good queens. And the advantage, there is a slight advantage of establishing these packages with old queens, and that they're carrying quite a bit more pheromone than these new queens are, and the bees will stick on their package, where you got a package being no brood or anything else, and they'll stick on that package quite a bit better. For you guys that maybe only buying a couple, 3 packages, you don't maybe notice drift, because drift is your biggest problem when you've got larger numbers. It gets too hard to go back and try and balance that out if they drift on you. When you establish those things, several packages, you want to keep them, in your situation, if you're going to keep them all in one place, keep them at least, your packages at least 10 feet apart. And your orientation isn't too bad. If they're oriented south, that's fine, but the biggest thing is keep that entrance narrowed down. Keep your entrance narrowed down, keep it about 10 foot apart. Do it in the later part of the day, wet them down when you shake the package in. And the reason for the later part of the day is less flight time for them to cause problems. Once they get in, if they kind of go into the evening and get onto that new comb and start marching around on that comb, they'll start orienting and getting that thing established as themselves. And then the small entrance gives them a little bit less confusing. They get less confused. And with that older queen in there, they'll stick on that real good. The next problem is, once you've shook that thing in, at that time of year, it's possible that we can get some awful cold weather, and that's exactly what happened to us last year, and that's probably why we want to say something. There's a lot of ways to approach this cold weather. In Canada, they're putting packages in the middle of April too, and So it isn't that it's where they have no brood to protect. It's just a matter of food. Then don't worry about them getting cold. It's just a matter of food. And if you're putting it into an old dead out with a little bit of honey in your single, naturally you're establishing it in the single, you'll be a lot. It's better than obviously foundation. So there's two different things you're up against there. If you're putting it into an old hive, you got certainly a step ahead of if you're trying to establish it on foundation. The 4-pounders can establish better on foundation with feed. They're really gonna take off and want to draw that out. So the one of the keys is to keep an eye on your weather. If it came down to where you can't get that package in, you can that feed can is going to be pretty much empty. If it came down to it, you could pull that feed can, shake them down, pull that feed can out, and just put a mason jar with some holes punched in it, and just put a piece of cardboard over the top and cut a hole in it, and you're going to have to feed them if you don't get them established fairly soon after you pick them up. But it isn't impossible by any means to feed them. But they do need feed. And there's several ways so once you go to establish the things, it probably depends on your situation. Let's just say you're going back and establishing a package in dead outs. The preferred method of feeding that everybody talks about is these inside feeders, and there's several types. This is an older feeder that we used to get, and it has advantages, disadvantages. This is the new feeder that we're getting from Man Lake that we really like, and we kind of put a screen in it and block off the ends a little bit. We're up against, moving a lot to where it's hard to go back and pick up buckets, and we like blocking the ends so we don't get quite so much robbing around the rims of the lids. And these things work really good for taking it up fast. They work really good for convenience. We can pump faster than we can fill jugs. They work really good for taking it up fast. The one disadvantage is that they don't work when it's cold. If you haven't got the feed in them and it turns cold on them and they're away from the feed, they can't take it. And you can see that in California where you can't get over to the feeder. So that's one thing you got to kind of, usually 9 times out of 10 you'll get kind of a little hole in it because they will take it up so fast. They'll pull down a gallon. A good one on a good 60-degree day will pull down a gallon in 24 hours. So all you need is a hole. But if you're starting from zero like you are with a package, there's no margin for error like we had this year, and it turns cold on you before they've got a chance to pull it in very good, and you get in trouble real fast. So I think if you're establishing something on foundation, you got to use these internal feeders just to push that feed to them harder. And if you're on foundation, you're probably pushing feed to them at probably a gallon every 3rd day, as long as the weather's warm, or basically pushing it to them as fast as they'll take it down. With a good feeder, they could take it down that fast. The other thing, if you didn't have the internal feeder, would be a top feeder, which has advantages. The advantage of the top feeder is they take it a little slower, which is come with an advantage, it's a little stimulating. But the top feeder also will work no matter how cold it is. If it's 30 degrees, they'll be up through the lid working on that thing, and they don't take it fast, but they're taking it consistently, and that's a big advantage. So another strategy would be, particularly if you're on old comb, would be, this is the lid we use. It's just a flat lid. It's just got a cleat on the end just to keep it straight and to keep it from sliding. And then we drill a hole in the top, and we put a plug in it during the winter. Otherwise, the plug stays on all summer, and it's kind of a ventilation thing, and the drones can go in and out, whatever. And that's an inch hole. An inch hole is what we've come up with as the best size. And you like that thing set, if you notice the thing's pushed just a little bit offset on a 9-frame spacing, it puts that hole a little more centered right over a slot in the frames rather than over the top of the frame. That's just little detail things that we do. And then this is a bucket you'd use as a 1-gallon bucket. This is just the lid. This particular one has a screen in it, which can be done, but it's easy.
Just hold the lid like this, and I'll zoom in on it.
It's easy enough to just get a 1/16 inch bit and drill about 8 holes in it. And you got to keep an eye if you leave your bucket. One disadvantage of buckets, if you put them on there and walk away from them and leave them for a month, you'll come back and they will propolize stuff over. If you're pulling your buckets off every 10 days, you won't have any problem. Then this, we found that this is the best cap. You can't come up with we couldn't come up with a regular hole saw to match any of these caps. This hole is running an inch and 3/8. We like that hole because it's minimum that you need to fill, and this particular cap works fairly well. We like this cap, and it snaps, and it allows you to fill it without pulling the lid off. I mean, you can pull the lid off, but, and the buckets that we get are from U-Line. That's just a material handling supply house, and you can order them down to quantities of only 5. As far as drilling this hole, you have to have a variable bit in order to make just the right hole for that. I don't know if we could help you with that or not. If you're interested, you could let us know. But those bees will come up, even if it's cold, we'll be coming up and working that thing all the time, and it's the best cold weather feeding that you can. That's why you like it in the spring. Another idea, if you weren't going to equip yourself with these inside feeders, which that's what we have to use. We also use buckets, but that's what we have to use. But we use it because we migrate. I'm not a fan of the internal feeder that much. I like a bucket better. And a strategy for push and feed to them harder is you can get just a rim like this. This particular one's for an 8 frame, and you just put it on your top bars and get a gallon bag and fill it up with syrup and just lay it down on there and just poke some holes on it, put your lid back on, put your brick back on, and they'll take that down really fast. They'll take a gallon down in 24 hours. Whereas a bucket, under cold conditions, it might take them every bit of 10 days. But so you can see, if you're trying to draw out foundation, you need to push it to them a faster method than a bucket. But you can see that if it turns really cold, you got to be aware that if you got the feed on it, feed in the right place for them when it comes. It's just something you got to watch and something to be ready for. We like the buckets. Once you get out of the cold weather, we like the buckets. And that's what it takes.